That was awesome.
That was awesome. I
All
love
right.
your stories.
So I think we're going to bring up Trey Cory,
We are.
campus pastor from College Station, Texas, Grace Bible Church. There he is.
How do you feel about College Station, Texas, Sutton?
Yeah, I know. Glorious in the background right here. So I want to introduce Pastor Trey Cory. He is my pastor at campus pastor for the Southwood campus at Grace Bible. Grace Bible is a church that on a given weekend might have 5,500 across 3 different campuses. And for everybody that doesn't know Texas and doesn't know, College Station is the home of Texas A&M University. They have over 60,000 students on an ongoing basis. One of the reasons why I wanted to ask Pastor Trey to come in and talk to us today is this is a church that has an enormous amount of college kids. And guess what? These college kids aren't in town right now. And so this is so as we've talked to different churches and different types of churches, I wanted to talk to Pastor Trey about, what's going on at Grace Bible, and specifically as it relates to community groups and with the college kids that are no longer in town anymore.
You bet. For us, like a lot of guys and a lot of groups, churches, we are pivoting and trying to figure out how to respond in the midst of these moments. And so, yeah, we've seen some of our college students first come back into town after spring break and then likely head back home. And so our college ministry has pivoted and kept things going in terms of Zoom groups and online groups.
Did you have Zoom groups before COVID?
We had no Zoom groups, nothing virtual going on. We did post a lot of our sermons online, and we had probably about 300 views in a week off of those sermons. And so for us to kind of go into recorded services that we then streamed, to YouTube or Facebook Live, we've seen, like a lot of people, big surge, a big change. I think for us, one of the things that we recognized was the first few weeks we were probably seeing most of our displaced regular attenders pop into those places. And then as we kind of got situated into this space, we've increasingly seen a lot of our alumni. So a lot of these Aggies that graduated, that loved Grace Bible Church, that took off all across wherever, tuned back in to kind of reconnect with our staff. We've seen missionaries as well that have tuned in. And so, but there really was Easter that we saw just a huge surge of clearly people that were not regular attenders, not necessarily alumni, that were maybe walking into the door on Easter was a threshold that was too much to cross, but coming in and checking in online was a much easier step. And so for us, it's kind of, as you guys putting this together, is kind of pushed the conversation of how do we all of a sudden connecting with people that weren't walking through our doors, how do we kind of, in a sense, first introduce ourselves? So one of the conversations we've started to have over the last couple of weeks was not only how do we get people into our community groups, but how do we introduce who we are? And so this previous Sunday, our senior pastor, right before the sermon that he actually wasn't giving, kind of had a vision moment to highlight who we are, what we're trying to do, what we value. And so, and also even in thinking of the lead in to the live stream, the exit out of the live stream, realizing we needed to kind of overhaul those as great introductory moments as to who we are, what we value, and what we're asking people to be a part of. And so this previous Sunday as well, even my own wife and I did a welcome and an invitation into small groups. And to be honest, one of the things that we're seeing was, yes, we had some people respond, but as I've popped into groups, as I've popped into even some of our Sunday school class-like groups, we're seeing more people step into groups, not from our institutional invitation, but from the organic invitations that are happening in the groups themselves. And so as we try to shepherd our home group, community group leaders, we're going to continue to push them to, I know it's a tendency to kind of look inwardly to, hey, are we surviving and are we hanging in? But to can then really push them to say, are you having conversations in your cul-de-sac or on your street as you're quarantined, you can't go anywhere? And a great opportunity to enter into those conversations and invite people into not just a live stream, but into community. And so one of my favorite stories of this past week was I jumped on at 11 o'clock to one of our kind of Sunday school classes. It's an intergenerational group. from empty nesters all the way to young adults, young professionals. And they had almost 70 people on a Zoom call. So a ton of empty nesters. They had created an IT tech team of the young adults to help those maybe that weren't as technologically comfortable to figure out how to do Zoom, how to get onto Zoom, how to answer questions as they were having problems. And even on that Zoom call, there was 5 to 8 people that were brand new that had never shown up to our campus, had never been in that class, that were there for the first time through Zoom. And so one of the things that we're just seeing is, yes, we can be thinking about how do we move people from that live stream online moment into these Zoom community groups, but even more so as we try to shepherd our leaders and our existing groups. How do we encourage them to be inviting? They're, one of the things we've always talked about is we always want there to be a seat that's open. We always want there to be a spot open at the table. And so even as we do Zoom or we go virtual, well, it's increasingly easy to invite. And so are people inviting? And so So we're kind of thinking about it from those two sides of how do we continue to overhaul that live stream to introduce ourselves, to create next steps off of it, but also how do we shepherd our leaders and train them for the opportunity that's here, and for that, frankly, an invite from someone in a group is always more effective at some level than an institutional moment of you should join a group.
Right.
And we'll continue to do that. But
so let me ask you a question. So if you didn't have groups, I bet there's a ton of churches that are listening right now. They didn't have Zoom community groups, and then they seen the explosion just like you, and they're popping into groups like you just said, and there's 70 people on there. And so you're like, okay, we need to create more groups because there's huge demand. How do you train up in this world community group leaders? How do you do that when it seems like overnight you need a whole army of them?
Yeah, I think part of it right now, frankly, is we've kind of leaned on staff to begin to lead some of these brand new groups. And so that's been one of our first ways is as we kind of we've let people invite into existing groups, but as we've provided an invite out of the live stream, we've been trying to put those people into new groups that we're leading by staff at this point. Okay. And so we figure we can then bring people in and then help multiply those groups, raise leaders up from that. But kind of, especially as our staff are pivoting often with programs that they were leading that look different, there's some space that we've been able to kind of regain off of their job description to say, hey, here's what we really think would be the highest and best right now is to kind of mobilize you into this space and have you lead some groups and kind of get into at a frontline level with people that are going to jump in. So
okay, so let's talk a little bit college part of it. So when you look 3-4 months ahead, and most likely, we already know the college kids aren't coming back to town this summer. So we know that all the way through till like May 15th, we're not going to have college kids in town. So what does it look like over these next months with these, kind of focused on these groups? What does that look like to try to get more and more people in groups and then to build and multiply these groups out?
Yeah, I think one of the first things that we've in our college ministries probably led the way with this was our whole church fits on a college calendar. So when we hit, middle of May, things kind of start to wind down, and half of our regular attenders have left town, and so the energy, the air in the room kind of dissipates. All the restaurants open back up, the streets clear out. You can park wherever, drive wherever. And so normally we take a full stop break as we kind of then go back into June. And so there's normally a 2 to 3 week window where programming dies down. We simplify programming. We're catching our breath, preparing for August. And one of the big shifts I've seen really from our college ministry already is not calling a break. So the students aren't here. They're not leaving and coming back. So we're displaced for the next 3 months anyways, the next 4 months. And so they're having their groups just continue to meet. So kind of the idea of a break per se is lessening and changing in that sense. And so groups are just continuing to meet. And I think partly because people are available, partly because you don't have a real residential location change. And there's just a real desperate need to connect in the midst of these shelter-in-place moments. And so I'd say for us, that's been a big shift is we're seeing greater consistency of meetings we're seeing organic growth of those groups. I think the group length time is shortening, but we're seeing people invite, we're seeing people meet with greater consistency. And one of the things that you guys asked too was just even, I think for a lot of us that are young families, so we have 2 kids in elementary school, that typically to be in a home group means we're leaving kids behind, we're getting a babysitter.
Right.
This new Zoom environment, we keep our pajamas on, get some ice cream, sit down on the couch 2 minutes before, pop open Zoom, and not paying a babysitter to be a part of the group is probably for a lot of our young families created an ease of that experience that's helped with consistency, not just with their availability.
Right.
Great point, Trey.
So Trey, just one more last question. So let's go even farther. Let's say that school comes back in August and it's September. Do you see these? I know it's a long time from now, but do you see maybe these Zoom groups continuing to just be a part of what's the fabric of the church?
I think we could see some young families where the childcare piece is challenging that might continue to say, hey, Zoom just creates a simplicity for us and let's continue to do that. I think by and large, we're imagining that our bread and butter community groups kind of go back to living rooms, back to meeting in person.
Okay.
What we are pivoting to try to do, though, and we've talked about it for years, but we now have an opportunity, is to really beef up kind of an online course kind of idea, creating training modules, creating classes that we wanted our people to be able to go through, and utilizing the summer to begin to build those out so that they're there come fall. Things that we've always wanted to kind of be able to push out and have as moments that you don't have to come up to the church for the class or the material, but you can go through it with a home group. You could go through it as a couple. You could go through it at your own schedule, your own pace. And so I think for us, we're imagining our community groups would pivot back to in-person living rooms, but seeing a space for kind of an online learning module that we just have seen a need for, that we haven't get to. That's where we see kind of the ongoing opportunity with the time and the energy that we have right now.
That's cool.
Awesome.
Thanks, Pastor Trey. This is awesome. This is awesome. Thank you. Good to see you.